Adaptations, a word that Hollywood has made sure will strike fear in the hearts of gamers and weebs alike. But the idea of an adaptation can be seen for decades with the idea of adapting books into movies. Those felt much more welcome as they were adapting a medium that relied on the reader's imagination into a medium where everything is visualized. But now that books kind of, in newspeak, fell off, we now have three big powerhouses in the entertainment industry: live action film, animation, and video games. And with the nature of modern business practices, many have tried to adapt them from one medium to the other. Most have failed miserably. Now, video games have recently seemed to break through that curse, but for animation and anime, oh god. There, it's okay. No, it's okay. Take your time. But I'm here to say it can work, and even the disasters we've seen could have also worked. Yeah, get your booze out, but I think if you hear what I have to say, there's a lot we can learn. But first, the biggest question we need to answer is, well, why? Why do this in the first place? Why adapt something from one medium to another? Well, I hope it's because the people making it realize that each medium has different strengths and weaknesses. Hell, take YouTube videos for example. Right now it's commentary with footage of something that, well, I don't really know yet. Or how about a face cam, so you can actually put a face to my voice. And finally, here's a series of stick figure drawings I drew in MS Paint to show my commentary in a more animated manner. All of these have valid reason to be used in this video. Okay, maybe not the last one. I'm fucking beautiful, okay? You're gonna talk shit like that? I mean, wait, what are you doing with that, huh? What? Wait. But let's dive into the main reason to use the three mediums of modern entertainment. With live action, it allows for the actors to give a full body performance, so a lot of subtlety can be gained. It can also allow directors to capture natural beauty rather than creating it. For the most part, it's something great for something more grounded. Animation is vibrant, enthusiastic, and exaggerated. Amazing for something over the top and stylized. And video games present the most unique and difficult hurdle when it comes to adapting. You press a button and shit happens. Now of course, there are obviously rule breakers, like I think we can all agree that Marvel movies are as close to grounded as the economy is stable.
I was gonna
But I think exploring how mediums do things that other mediums do great will help when discussing adaptations. Starting with video games, the obvious answer is cutscenes. Many of these cutscenes either use really cinematic shots with realistic graphics such as Metal Gear or Yakuza to create that feeling of live action, or to use stylized animations like Hi-Fi Rush, depending on the art style of the game. For animation, I want to personally look at Chainsaw Man. Despite all of the over-the-top anime fights, it's no secret it borrows a lot from classic Hollywood. But I think the moments that stand out are not even just scenes where characters are just talking, but scenes where characters are just doing normal everyday things. The animation is smooth like butter and the backgrounds are vibrant, but barely anyone really recognizes the sound design. It's so crisp and realistic. It adds such a relaxing vibe to scenes where literally basically nothing is going on. I can honestly watch hours of this, no need for fucking Lofi Girl. This is the stuff I gotta relax/study to. And for live action, I'm going to go with some of those nice fight scenes. Not the shaky cam bullshit where you can't see anything, but the nice, crisp, choreographed fight scenes like the ones in old Hong Kong movies, or even something newer like John Wick. They give that over-the-top feeling just like animation, but they're over-the-top because they're in real life, with real stunts that could have actually hurt people. But I think it also has to do with me having a greater interest in those mediums. Being an amateur martial artist and a wannabe tricker, I understand how hard some of these moves can be and how much they have to train, so seeing a stuntman pull them off really gets me going. Same with how an artist or an animator can also be more impressed with the moments in Chainsaw Man. And I'm sure if you recall my drawings from earlier, you can tell I have really no idea what goes into animation. But I think these are the moments that studios should be looking for when creating their adaptations. Places where people of different expertise can create a similar feeling. Take Avatar: The Last Airbender for example. Many of the bending were based on real martial arts, so it would have been so cool to get real martial artists of different styles representing different elements to basically film those same exact live action fight scenes I discussed earlier, except add bending to it. But no, instead we got this. What's this? We have 6 earthbenders huffing and puffing, swinging their arms, looking incredibly constipated, and oh, a 7th comes in and he shoots the tiny pebble into the firebender standing completely still doing nothing. What an immaculate performance to lift such a great rock. But honestly, live action Avatar, along with the other atrocious live action adaptations, are not a good example to look at because there's so much more wrong with it than just being a failed adaptation. There's no point in pointing on a couple weeds in a forest fire. So instead, if we want to look at an example of when not to do an adaptation, we need to look at an adaptation that failed from the adaptation alone, with as little to do with anything else. And I have found an example. One that's not actually bad, but compared to the original is just an inferior version, and that would be the Ace Attorney anime, with its original counterpart being the Ace Attorney trilogy.
Objection! Take that!
So you see, I was eating at Burger King last night and
Objection!
Ain't no way you was eating at Burger King! That shit is disgusting! What? Why? I don't see how that holds any relevance to a murder case. Prosecutor, may you please rip apart this pathetic excuse? Oh hell nah, he got a point. Who the fuck eats at Burger King? Judge, I think we know that this bitch is guilty. Okay, so now we know that sometimes for how well thought out an adaptation is, there are just some things where the adaptation is simply not a good idea. So I think it's finally time we look at good adaptations. And while there's been a lot of shitty video game adaptations over the years, the recent times have shown us to give us some bangers. Now I think everyone and their grandma has already sung their praises about these shows, but I want to dive into why they worked in the medium they were adapted from and to. Cyberpunk, Edge Runners, and Arcane were both shows that took the world by surprise, and there's a lot to love, but one of the main reasons is that they both managed to portray the dystopian landscapes of their worlds honestly much better than original games. Or maybe that's because the original games fucking suck donkey dick. But also the cybernetics in Cyberpunk are so uniquely portrayed in Edge Runners and breathe some very welcome life into the fight scenes. Same with the fantasy world of League of Legends and Arcane. But another show that has caught people by surprise is the recent Last of Us show. But it doesn't have the technology of Cyberpunk or the fantasy of Arcane. It's much more grounded and dirty, which is why it was perfect for a live action adaptation. I'll be honest, I haven't actually seen much, but for what I have seen, the acting, the cinematography, the set design, all of it perfectly captured the dirty and brutal world of The Last of Us. And with these three examples, I think I...
Hold it! Objection!
You see, every adaptation is immediately faced with two options: to adapt the world and maybe some of the characters and create a new story, or just adapt the original story. And judging by the examples we've given, there's one that is far superior than the other. And it's obviously to create your own story and actually be, well, original, which I guess is kind of rare these days. Right off the bat, this frees the writers so much as they have so much freedom on what they want to do. On top of this, you already have a world with its rules already established, so you have a lot of foundation to build off of. I think doing things can actually make it something more than just an adaptation. The main thing we've been talking about is reimagining, seeing the world in a different way. But I think you could use this opportunity to add to that world, add to something that's already so great. But I feel this definition of adaptation is kind of getting vague, that even something like Star Wars The Clone Wars is technically an adaptation. Well, it kind of is. Okay, listen here, I did say 2 videos ago that I wouldn't be talking about anything Disney or Star Wars related for a very long time, and then I made a rant about Star Wars, but just let me talk about it just one last time. It helps me prove my point, and then after this, we can all move on, alright? Good. I'm certain some of you will say it's a spin-off and not really an adaptation, which would then make most of this video be about spin-offs that are in different mediums. But I did put kind of in the title, so under section 38 of I Made It the Fuck Up, that does not make me liable to any accusations of clickbait. And if you want more information, speak to my lawyer, I guess. But anyways, back to our adaptations. The Clone Wars takes the universe and the characters from the original movies and makes them animated. But the biggest thing is that it adds to the original movies. It gives us new context to some events, and all around made the prequel trilogy just much better. Not only that, but also added new worlds and characters that are now fan favorites. And it still reimagines, we see lightsaber fights and familiar locations in animation, and they look amazing. But like I said, many would not really cite this as an adaptation, neither would they Edge Runners or Arcane. But I think this has to do with the attitude that specifically Hollywood has. Although I think the general public has actually shifted to accepting both animation and video games, Hollywood has fell behind and continued with this superiority complex that has plagued their adaptations. Now, I love movies in the live action medium. So much so that if I had the choice to work in any of the 3 mediums I've listed, I would 100% pick live action every time. I think it's amazing, but I also recognize the beauty in animation and even in video games. So to me, all of Hollywood's attempts at adaptation not only are huge missed opportunities, but also just slaps in the faces of fans and the authors of the original work. And there's no slap more painful than Cowboy Bebop. Okay, they've probably been worse, but let's just ignore those for now. Personally, if there was any anime I would have thought would have worked in live action, it would have been Cowboy Bebop. There's no supernatural elements, hell, it's probably more realistic than Star Wars, so it would have been perfect for a transition. In fact, when I was researching for this video, I found a fan film that perfectly captures how a live action adaptation of a fight from Cowboy Bebop would look like. So go check it out. It's way better than Netflix, but in a minute I'm going to show you why that's not really saying much. What's even more interesting is the amount of things you have to work with besides just the original story. Many of the characters in the show have tons of backstory, like Spike in the crime syndicate or Jet being an investigator. But the ambiguity of these characters are kind of part of what makes them so interesting, so a prequel story might ruin that. But if you take one look at the wiki, you will see so much more. You have an entire world called the Titan War that some of the characters from the show served in. You might be wondering why I'm not really saying much else, but the beauty is that there's barely any info on what the war was even for. It's a blank slate. You have a war fought by the Mars army, it is literally a blank slate of what it could have been. Not only that, but remember Spike's days in the criminal underworld? Well, he and Vicious worked for the Red Dragon Crime Syndicate, which is basically, as the wiki puts it, Space Yakuza. And once again, the wiki explicitly states, not much is known about the Crime Syndicate. You literally had Space Yakuza as a blank slate and you didn't use it. But no, they think they just do what the original show did, but cooler and funnier. So then this is what we get.
You'll never know true power until you've tasted the testicles of a man who's wronged you.
And a little side tangent incoming, but I think that a part of the reason why live action adaptations have this kind of like uncanny valley feeling is the fact that adapting animated characters into live action is a lot harder than Hollywood likes to think it is. It really isn't a problem with animation and video games because they both have a lot of leeway in how realistic or cartoony a character is because they literally create the model for the character. But for live action, you not only have to find a real life person who looks similar, but you also have to design a costume to capture the feeling of the original while still abiding by the laws of physics. Unless you use CGI, of course. Many of the scenes in live action Cowboy Bebop look so off because everyone else looks like normally dressed people, but then you have Spike and Jet who look like they just got out of Comic-Con. Now you know what would solve this problem is if you created original character designs that fit the original work but also be feasible to make in real life. Like, I honestly cannot fathom how the fuck they are going to do the live action One Piece because I mean just look at some of these guys. But with all this in mind, let's go back to our original choice. Let's say you picked a bad choice and decided to retell the same story. What you've essentially done is put yourself in the shadow of the original. And even something decent like The Last of Us TV show has this problem. No matter what they do or how far they want to deviate from the game, it will always be compared and judged to the original game. So now you have another choice to make, and this one is much more difficult. How much do you want to stay close to the source material and how much do you want to deviate from it? Now if you're to stick as closely as possible, then just one question I gotta ask. What's the point? Unless something horribly wrong happened in the boardroom, the original work should already be in the medium that is best suited for it. So you've just made the exact same thing, except in the medium it was not supposed to be in, you're just destined to make an inferior version of the same story. So I would personally rather you deviate from the original story and change it up a bit so it better suits this new medium. But then you have some complain, oh well this is nothing like the original, which just kind of puts us back at square one. So oh no, let's just ditch this option altogether and go back to the other one and create something new. But at the same time, you don't want to create something so batshit insane that it's nothing like the original and the story is completely stupid and is he having sex? This is harder than I thought. But if I'm going to close this video with the most important thing to remember for adaptations, it's this. If the opportunity for an adaptation arises, chances are it's because the original work is already really well thought out and is made with true love and passion. So what's the point in redoing it? I mean, we all know the saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Instead, build upon what is already so great. Or reimagine it into something that still respects the original work. This should be a very valuable opportunity for both the creator of the original work and the creator of the adaptation. It can show why this work is so special by using it as a vessel for other creative minds. Not just to be a cash grab to retell or butcher an already loved story. One of the things that inspired this video was actually another video that got recommended to me. It was a video comparing the original version of Breaking Bad with the Japanese dub. And one of the comments was something along the lines of, oh, now I want an anime adaptation of Breaking Bad. And okay, I know it's probably a joke, or at least I hope it was, but judging by the 127 replies, people, me included, realize that this is just not a good idea. And the answer is simply, well, why? Why would we take away the amazing full-body performances by Bryan Cranston, Aaron Paul, Giancarlo Esposito, and so many more for just voice acting? Why should we redo the amazing directing and cinematography of each episode, except just redo it in animation? Why should we get rid of the amazing set design and locations for an animated version? Because for however good a story may be, it's only as good as how well you tell that story, and Breaking Bad tells it with its perfection of live action. And this obviously applies to every single story. Now, if you were to make an animated Breaking Bad spin-off, maybe about what some of the characters were up to in their childhood, and maybe you have something that... What the fuck? So, what did we learn from all this? I don't know, just don't do something that is obviously stupid. For example, a few weeks ago, I watched a Mario movie, and yeah, it was a movie. It was satisfactory, and while watching, it hit me that this really isn't that hard. All you need is some love and creativity, but of course respect for the original work. In all honesty, the main reason for this video is that I want to get rid of some of the bad stigma that live action adaptations get, especially for anime. I of course understand why people are skeptical about these projects, but I also want to highlight the potential of a good adaptation that is done with love and respect. I know people use this comparison a lot, but comic book movies initially weren't very good, but eventually people figured it out. Just like how people are figuring it out with video games, and I genuinely don't think anime is far behind. Just the idea of two cultures from entirely different parts of the world coming together to create something special sounds really cool. Or maybe the only way for me to see that reality is if I get hit by a truck and get sent to another dimension where all this turns out to be true. Or maybe it's already happening as I speak. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, and I'll catch you in another time.